So I study innovation for Rackspace. I go around and talk to lots of startups and lots of companies. And we're going to have a fun panel today talking about robotics. You know, last night I was at a party and a new startup came up to me with a little stick for a GoPro camera that had a brushless motor on it and had compute and sensors and was a new kind of gimbal that cost, retailed probably around $200, but the cost of goods is less than $70.
Okay.
That shows, I think, what is the true benefit of robotics, that the motors are coming down in cost, the compute is coming down in cost. But let's talk about you first. Why are you on stage here? Where do you come from? Who are you?
So we're a company called Grishin Robotics, and we are an investment company who invest in consumer robotics all around the world. We already did 8 investments, most of them are in the United States. And we focus on consumer robotics companies. We believe that if you want to really change the market and make it much, much wider, you need a lot of real consumer robots around us. And I think one of the key things why it's happened is that people start to believe in something when they can see it. Yeah. Because, for example, for the last 30 years, we had a lot of improvements in industrial robotics.
Yeah.
But nobody sees it. It's somewhere in the factory.
At Tesla, you would see it if you got a tour of the factory floor there.
Yeah, but general public, they see Roomba. Why? Because it's in their rooms. So, and I think robotics right now have pretty much the same situation which computer industry have in the beginning of 80s. Yeah. So let's move to the history. At that time, you have big mainframe companies, and access to mainframes was banks, military, governments had access to mainframes, but nobody else. And then suddenly, price of the computers dropped 100 times, and huge amount of entrepreneurs have access to cheap computers. Yeah. And we get new wave of startups. Microsoft was founded, Adobe, Sybase, many others of them. And I think robotics pretty much repeats the same situation. We had a lot of improvements in industrial robotics, but it was accessible only for big companies, automotive companies, this kind of stuff. And for last maybe 5 years, we have significant drop of prices for components for robots. And now a small company where you have 5, 10 engineers with maybe 100K funding can start to do robotics products. And I think this is fundamental change, and there is several reasons why it's happened. Reason number 1, price of companies going down significantly. Yeah. And I think key reason is smartphones. Yep. In smartphones, we deliver more and more of them, a lot of innovation. And now, for example, if you want to have camera in your robot, you can buy HD camera for $3. Yeah. 10 years ago, this camera cost $10,000. Yep. The same with processors and some kind of...
Well, the gimbal I saw last night, cost of goods is $70, right?
Absolutely.
And this company was built for $20,000.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. At least to a prototype stage. Now they're raising, it'll cost maybe a few $1 million to make the packaging and get into the Apple store and build up some inventory and do some marketing, right?
Yeah. So I think thing number 2 is that historically hardware company have very long cycle from R&D to market. Yeah. They do prototype, test it for several years, see maybe it's not works, let's do again. Now, because of 3D printers and 3D printers revolution, prototyping...
Their entire prototype was built on a 3D printer. They finished it yesterday afternoon, and they finished the software for the motors yesterday afternoon.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. So what's happening is that right now you can have people with internet culture, which like to test and deliver product quickly, get feedback and do new improvements. And you can have this kind of culture in robotics, which was not the case even several years ago. Yeah. And I think reason number 3 is, of course, of creating of crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter. Yeah. So now you can have thousands of users help you fund your consumer robotics startup, which also was not possible several years ago. So all these 3 combinations change environment completely. So now robotics is not science fiction anymore. It's really a new industry, and I believe it will be $1 trillion industry in the next 10 years. and it will be huge.
I think it's going to be a lot bigger than that.
We'll see,
I
we'll
mean,
see.
Come on,
Are you sure?
Nest alone went for $3 billion, right?
okay,
So you add on a few nests into a new space, like you're building a pet robotic,
Yeah.
right? That
PetNet,
feeds the pets.
PetNet.
PetNet.
Yeah.
And there's lots of other companies that are using motors or things like on drones. There's several drone companies that have sprung up. Some of those are going to be billion-dollar companies,
Absolutely.
right? So do you include drones in this space of robotics?
Yeah. So
Define a robot today, because does a robot need to look like what we just saw on stage, a humanoid thing, or is a vacuum cleaner a robot to you, or a drone?
I think pretty much any kind of discussion about robots starts from the question, what is robots? And I think you can define many definitions, but I think it's smart hardware plus smart software. And I found very interesting tendency. Once people found out what's robot doing, they stopped to use the word robot.
Yeah.
So usually they use word robot when they don't know what the thing is doing. So if it's do something useful, it's called vacuum cleaner, cash machine. Let's look on cash machine.
Yeah.
20 years ago, or maybe 30 years ago, if you describe for somebody this special box which you come, press the buttons and give you cash, say, oh, it's robot. But now nobody call it robot, right? No. The same with the navigation system in your car. Somebody help you where to go, where to turn left, turn right. It looks like magic, it's like a robot, but nobody call it robot, right? It's called like navigation system. So I think that future of I think there is two big, discussions around robots. How robotics will look like in the nearest future. And I think that I don't believe it will be universal robots anytime soon.
Yeah.
And I think that robotics will follow pretty much the same scheme which was happening with smartphones. So before we have universal device called smartphone, we have a lot of niche products. We have MP3 players, we have photo cameras, we have calculators, we have phones. Each of them builds their own market, and only after it, they start to go more and more like universal device. And I think the same happened with robots. In the next 5-10 years, we'll see a lot of vertical solutions where robots do one thing, but very, very well. Some simple tasks like cleaning your house, do some security, opening the doors, feed your pet, entertain you. For example, I can say that one of the mistakes which a lot of robotics entrepreneurs are doing, they're focusing on technology, not focusing on what people need.
Yeah.
And I think, I remember myself in the year 2000, 2001, we pretty much do the same mistake on the internet. We was like technical programmers who, okay, let's do something cool technology, but you should think how design is look like, how users will use it, because nobody will buy ugly robots, right? It's never happened. Robots is consumer device, it should look beautiful. You should like to use it. It should be really, really like nice design product. So I think if you build new robotic startups, you should focus on what kind of problem you are solving.
Yeah.
You should focus on design. You should focus on consumer experience. And of course, you should think that robotics is physical goods. So you need to do distribution of your product. You need to understand about customer service. By the way, this is one important thing. A lot of my friends who do robotic startups and come from internet, they don't think about customer service too much. Yeah. And when you deliver physical products, you should expect that somebody can broken, users want to send it back, and this kind of mindset is very important.
Yeah, the customer service can be part of the product itself. When you buy a General Motors car now, it comes with OnStar, right? And if you hit a tree, it calls you up and says, are you okay? And if not, we'll send an ambulance, right?
Absolutely.
That's part of customer service today.
And you can use this kind of different kind of business model. You can have subscription model. Like, so you say, we don't want to buy robot. We just subscribe for the service which your robot are doing, right? And if something broken, you just get new one, and that is, yes. And I think that as a thought, I see a lot of similarity between internet and robotics. And the other important thing for robotics, I think, is to build a lot of building blocks. For example, if you can look on internet, you have many building blocks. You have operation systems like Linux, you have databases, you have Apache server. So a lot of building blocks which entrepreneurs can use to build new products.
Yeah.
I think in robotics, we also need to build this kind of building blocks.
Well, Electric Imp is one of those. They're building a chip for inside Internet of Things products, right?
Arduino, for example, Arduino, Raspberry Pi, this kind of things can be definitely building blocks, but we need them much more. And I think that it will be exciting if you can really much quick accelerate of building robots and bringing them to the market.
Yeah.
And you know, I think we already discussed good thing about robotics. We discussed that cost of hardware going down, it's easier to bring to the market, but there is some problems. I think problem number one is that particularly some parts of the robots, like motors, they are not upgraded so quickly as other components.
Yep.
For example, if you want
You can upgrade the software, though. This brushless motor I saw last night needs compute to run the motor, right? And you need to write software to tell the motor what to do. That can be upgraded.
Yeah,
right?
but
so that the gimbal can get better, or the device.
But still, if you can look 10 years ago, improvement in the cameras is significant.
Yeah.
But in terms of motors, it's not so much improvements, right? And I hope that drones will help, because before there was no market which require a lot of innovation in motors, like to be lighter, to consume less. There's no markets.
Yeah.
Now you have a lot of big companies who deliver a lot of drones, and definitely drones is one of the...
Yeah, DJI has
Yes.
2,800 employees already,
yeah.
And they're shipping drones around the world from China, right?
This is really cool drone. I like it very much. I like and I think innovation in motors are very important. Definitely batteries. Batteries is a huge issue, not only for robots, but for smartphones, for electric cars, for Tesla, for example. So I think definitely improvements in batteries.
And wearables.
And wearables, yeah. But the good thing for robotics that it's not only a robotics problem, it's like fundamental problems for many markets, and more companies try to do some kind of innovation. And I think the last important thing is that we need to find several killing apps for robotics.
Yeah.
Like with PC, when we have cheap computer, initially nobody know how to use it. But then we found two applications. One called spreadsheets, and it's like very useful
Bob
tool.
Frankston and
Yes, absolutely. And second application was games.
Yeah.
So these two applications really change how this small cheap box are used for millions of people, because they give some useful and they do something meaningful for them.
Yeah.
For robotics, we already have Roomba, which definitely is now the most impressive consumer robot. And I think if you look on the history on robotics after 2 years or maybe 20 years, definitely Roomba should be have big place there. I believe that telepresence robots can be huge thing.
Yeah, the Skype robots that you see on TV.
Yes. As a company which we have invested, Double Robotics, which we believe it can be huge thing. But you should be careful in terms of how you bring these robots to the masses, because robots should be available for people. Right? They should be cheap enough. Yeah. And my vision is that price of the consumer robot should be not more than average notebook price, like $2,000–3,000. If it's higher, it's much difficult to buy.
A Chromebook is $300, so that's what I was thinking about when you were saying notebook price.
Okay, but it's not like $10,000 or $20,000. It should be cheap, reliable, and it do something useful.
Yeah, there's going to be different price categories of robots. Sort of like the drone space is separating out into different price categories. There's the Parrot, which is $500. There's the DJI. For the professional videographer, that's $3,000, and there's a bunch in the middle, right?
Absolutely, sort of, but still I think the fundamental, for example, in telepresence robots, the biggest problem was, so far right now, is that price of telepresence robots was $20,000. Yeah. And you can buy cheap version, reliable, and companies like Double Robotics are changing this perception. And I think when you have telepresence robot with this cost of $2,000, it's changed the market significantly, and this is important.
What's happening in sensors right now? Because the robots I saw backstage all use sensors in some way. We've seen PrimeSense go to Apple, which is a 3D sensor. What else are you seeing happening in the sensor space that's going to inform what kinds of products can come out in the near future?
You know, in terms of sensors, I think there is two kind of sensors. One part of the sensors which are used in mobile phones, improvements are very significant. Accelerometers, this kind of sensor, light sensors, are changing really significantly, and this is good. The problem, there is other part of the sensors, like scanning, laser scanning, this kind of radars. They're not so massively used, and it's not so big improvements there. And I think in this part particularly, we need more improvements and more innovation. And I think it will be huge.
They're hard to build. Velodyne, who builds the spinning LiDAR on top of the Google self-driving car, it's down here in Morgan Hill. It costs, I don't know, $30,000, let's call it. They just came out with a smaller one, but it's really hard to get 80 lasers aligned. You know, it's a manufacturing problem.
Absolutely. So I think radars is definitely one of the biggest problems for this kind of sensors, and it's good if you will find massive application where you need cheap radars. In this case, innovation will be much, much quicker. This is what I found from mobile phone industry, right? Once somebody ready to pay for massive type of sensors, price going down, and people start to do innovation a lot. Yeah. And you know, I think it will be a lot of super exciting sensors. For example, I think 2 days ago I met an interesting company called Vessel. They do like a cup, which vessel, yes, which do really cup, which can understand what kind of water you put inside. So you can say you put Coke or you could put wine, and so you can pretty much have data of any kind of liquids you consume for all your life, right? This kind of sensor, which I think if they will be successful to bring it to the market, can huge impact in terms of how you do healthcare, how you control your consumer goods, this kind of stuff.
We only have a minute left. Stephen Hawking this morning said he's scared of artificial intelligence, and so does Elon Musk. We had a little conversation on the way to a brewery in Dublin with the guy who runs Palantir about this. Are you scared of this future world where your robot is going to be learning about its world and it might take over?
You know, I think that human beings are always scared about new technologies. In 19th, 30th, previous century, people were scared about radio because they thought that if you have radio, somebody can start the war, just give the message to the masses. Or people were scared about cars. So I think it's just usual process of progress where people are a little scared about something new, but people found out how to deal with this. So I definitely believe that we cannot stop progress, and we should invest in progress in the future.
Yeah. Where do we see your robots?
You can buy some of them. You can buy in App Store. Some of them you can buy online. And there's one company called PetNet who soon will start to sell their robots for feeding their pets and dogs, and I hope they will start to ship next year. So buy more and invest more money in robotics.
Very cool. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.